Good morning. I was sitting here, there was hardly anyone here, and then I come up and all these wonderful faces. Well, last week, for those who were here, you had the wonderful opportunity on Valentine's Day to watch Susanna and Sherry talking about relationship and the aspect of a healthy relationship and dealing with one another and taking into consideration all of the positive qualities that truly love brings about in a loving relationship as in a couple. And so today we are going to talk about love in relationships, but I decided to bring another twist to it because I won't have Sherry beside me to talk about the psychological aspects of bringing the aspect of love in relationship, meaning just between couples. So I decided to broaden a little bit more this aspect of the meaning of love and the need of love in relationship, as in every kind of relationship that exists nowadays in our society, because sometimes we don't have that one person beside us that we can claim to love as in a romantic partnership. But there are many other forms of love that we can experience in our lives, and this is basically what we are going to focus on today. So I wanted to decide and begin with the voices of kids, as I like to do, and they come to tell us what love is, to give us support for the beginning thought of our message this morning. Marcelo, can you get the light for me, please? Okay.
And second.
Oh.
Love is like over a gillion stuff. Helping someone even if you don't want to. When your parents or your teachers don't tell you to. Giving away stuff that you really, really like. If they wanted toys, I'll share. Sale toys. It's smiling and saying good things about them. I should say, you have very nice clothes on. I helped my mommy. I played with another person on the playground when she didn't have anybody to play with. When people are loving to me, I feel like I should do that to someone else. Because Jesus did the same for us. Just like your daughter says you will have them do to you. That you should treat the other one just like I've been treated before. Not like bad, but the times I've been good treated. Nobody really wants to play with somebody who's being mean. Being kind is helping those in need. Give them some food. Get fish and bread and green beans and peas and apples. I'll ask my mom or dad, can we go get food for this hungry person that I found? Love is hugging your mom and helping her wash the dishes. I just get the water thing and just spray them. People show me love by holding my hand, and they also give me a kiss on the head when I'm asleep very lightly. There's people that don't get love in other places of the world. You help them. Just help people. If we show people love, they can spread it all around the world. Okay, come here, Mommy. I'll show her something. I'll show you something. Come here, Mommy.
Helping others, doing unto them as they had done to us in the past, and that's not a bad thing, only the good things, right? We heard them talking about the aspect of just feeling loved, of looking for those that need assistance. And of course, we're looking from the point of view of a child, as in sharing toys. But when we bring it to our adult life, we start considering what is love, what is the meaning of love, and the kind of love that we put into the relationships, bringing about the need of understanding, of tolerance, of patience, of solidarity, of giving, especially when we don't find that we have anything to give. But according to the Spiritist teaching, divine laws will state that it is only through love that the Spirit can find true fulfillment. It is only through love that the Spirit will find the true fulfillment. And Allan Kardec, on the book, the Spirit's book, states that nature has given humans the need to love and to be loved. And that's nothing new. One of the greatest enjoyments granted to them on earth is their meeting with mutually attuned hearts. Nature thus grants them a foretaste of the happiness awaiting for them in the world of perfected spirits, where all is love and benevolence, a happiness that is refused to be selfish. I have never seen anything so beautifully written as far as what love is. So they're telling us that if what we find to be love here in our physical state of mind, in our spiritual evolution, they're telling us that it's only a foretaste. It tells us that love is progressive. It evolves. As we evolve, the idea of what love is changes as well. In the worlds where there are perfect spirits or spirits that have reached a level of spiritual evolution, they tell us that everything is all love and benevolence at all times. And how wonderful that we can have a foretaste, because it's something that makes us truly feel good. In the aspect of giving love and being loved, giving us a foretaste of what awaits us in the spirit realm when we reach that state of evolution. So it's no wonder that Allan Kardec and the good spirits focused on one of the divine laws, the natural laws, if you will, which is called the law of, come on, justice, love, and charity. It's one that they talk about where it brings about all the other virtues that lays dormant in our spirit. He will state, love and charity supplement the law of justice, because loving our neighbors is to do them all the good possible, all that we would wish to be done to ourselves. Such is the meaning of Jesus' words, love one another as brothers. Charity, according to Jesus, is not restricted to almsgiving, but embracing all our relations with our fellow humans, whether in situation below, equal, or superior to our own. So in the aspect of embracing all relationships, where you can see truly that there are every kinds of format of love in our world. We were talking just Wednesday, I think it was, right, John? About how we don't necessarily need to have a companion beside us, a romantic one, to be able to evolve. There are other ways in which we can evolve, applying the law of love, charity, and justice in the relationships that we have with those around us. And someone who is a clear example of this is the one person that we know and admire who reached out to those in society, to those most in need. And we're talking about Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was one of the persons who didn't need to have a physical companion beside her. She had the love and charitable actions to everybody in humanity, love for humanity. This is why Joanna de Angelis in the book Plenitude tells us that through the development of love in the home, the spirits becomes capable of loving with greater magnitude and depth, reaching out to society, the spirit's universal family. So Mother Teresa, she lost her father at a very early age, but she had her mother who was there to strengthen her convictions, because the two words that would summarize her in her life and experience was love and God. And her mother strengthened her conviction in her faith and the desire to be of service to other people as well. Take into consideration that love comes in many formats. We take, for instance, the example of a motherly love. Sherry, is there a difference between your love for Jake and Tachi and your love for Susanna? Yeah, that's good. Yeah. It manifests in so many different ways. We see people, if they do not have a husband, if they do not have children, how they manifest their love for someone else in their family. Think about you as a teenager falling in love for the first time. Everybody here fell in love for the first time, right? Come on. High school, right? Remember the giddiness, the heart, the palpitations, all those things? You get that again in a new relationship, but it's changed, it's mature. And then as it was stated here last week, When we first say I love you to the one that we have chosen to share our lives with, 15 years later, that I love you will have changed. The feeling will have developed differently. Other things will be taken into consideration. We get to know the person who is beside us. The person who will be beside us will show us who they truly are. So, Marcelo has been with me for 7 years, and the Andreia that he knew 7 years ago is a whole new woman today. True? True. It's not true. In reality, he's getting to know me. He's getting to know who I am. He's getting to know about my weaknesses, my strengths. He's getting to know me as a person. He's sharing his life with me, and I am sharing my life with him. So last week there was a lot of material brought about the aspect of being tolerant and accepting and supporting each other's dreams and building on the communication and bringing the love in so that we can have a healthy, long-lasting relationship. But that also applies to the other kind of relationships in our lives. For instance, with our kids, the relationship that we have with our kids, the relationship that we have in society, people that we admire, even in the Spiritus Center, if you want to bring it here. So it's going to vary very much so. According to Joanna de Angelis, the sentiment of love is developed in the family and the experiences that we often get, abnegation or renunciation, affection, kindness, tenderness, and even the not very so good times that people have in their family lives. Because it doesn't happen that people have a very secure and loving family as they grow up. And what they do with it as they grow is going to define the kind of relationship that they're going to have as an adult. And obviously we have to talk about this because it isn't always that we're going to find kids in a loving home. There are many kids in a very depressed, brutal, aggressive, abusive type of home style. Whether it's physical or verbal, the truth of the matter is that it exists. But she says that we are able to develop the sentiment of love. And not just that, she says that the ideal right now would be to take home as that starting point for developing love. Often when that doesn't happen, we will find that people will have examples and relationships and experiences and exposures to certain types of relationships where they're going to find ways to develop that sentiment within themselves, because love is a divine spark and we all have it within, waiting to be ignited for that huge explosion. So this is what she's bringing us as well. One of the things that Mother Teresa, bringing her back in her visualization of how life had to be lived in accordance to God and love, she also used to love to read about the Confessions of St. Augustine. The two of them had something in common that is truly beautiful. St. Augustine once stated the following. He said, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you." It is so beautiful. If we read that and try to analyze what he's trying to say, Mother Teresa will explain that what this means is that all of us in the world have an innate idea that God exists. And not just that, that God is love. That we have a longing for love, and in consequence, we have a longing for God. That's what she's talking about. And this is why we find in the Spirit's codification the teachings about this divine spark. She states further that in looking for God and longing for God, one of the things that we are automatically drawn to do is to apply love. And so she says that God will use us as instruments on earth to be his work of love. In relationships, the very same apply. And the Spirit's teachings will bring us the very same. Emmanuel stated that God utilizes his children on earth to be his tool of betterment for the world. Meaning we would be those soldiers who would use love as shield. Instead of attacking, we would love and embrace. And this is why the aspect of love in relationships is so important for us today. Who pointed the way to us about the aspect of loving one another and longing for God and being of service and loving one another was Jesus over 2,000 years ago. As a matter of fact, Joanna will bring us a little bit about him because she states that he regarded as the greatest commandment, that what we already know, summoning up the whole law and the prophets and love for God above all things, and then neighbors as well as for oneself. And she says that Jesus' recommendation about love is of indisputable effectiveness for our progress as well. This is what she's saying. If we want something to be effective in this current life, if we want to make the most, spiritually speaking, of our progress, she says that love is that undisputable, effective tool for our progress as well, because love is a generator of values responsible for our own happiness. Here's what she says in the book Plenitude. Love mellows individuals and incites them to uplifting attitudes about life. It leads them to think before making decisions, considering which ones are most compatible with the morals and longings of the heart, never wanting for their neighbor what they would not want to experience for themselves. They can take on commitments of prosperity without harm to themselves or to others as well. When she talks about love as being that tool that mellows individuals, that softens the individuals, she's talking about something that has to do with love as that unlimited capacity to be able to stop and observe, to be able to understand and tolerate, as was brought here last week. As love strengthens and develops within our hearts, there is going to be an ability for us to be open and honest without hurting, because we're going to take into consideration the moral aspects of what love truly brings about. It doesn't lessen, she says, when the difficulties arrive, because it uses every possible means to eliminate any obstacle or impediments to making amend in the relationship. So when time comes to shove, is that the expression? I always get that wrong. Push, time comes to push. Great, you guys. Yeah, push comes to shove. Thank you, John. John, please stand up and say that again, because I'll never get it.
Push comes to shove.
When push comes to shove in a relationship, what she's saying is that when love is developed between two individuals, this is every kind of relationship, not just a romantic one. She's saying that the person will find ways rather than impediments and obstacles to make things work. They will find an ability to find a solution. So then I read the other day that sometimes it's better to be wrong than right. Sometimes it's better to be in peace than right. Because sometimes when all you want to do is be right, that's all you get to be. You don't get to develop the relationship in its full potentials. She continues, through loving, people tend to forget their own agenda in order to give in of themselves. It's not about being submissive and your feelings and points not being heard. It's just talking about the give and take. Sometimes you forget about your own agenda, we forget about our own agenda, and we give of ourselves. What is it that the other needs from me at this moment? What is it that I am in a position to give that the other is not in a position to do the same? Because that's truly what it's about, giving and receiving, as we so much learned about here last week. She says, in love, people feel enriched as they help others. And here's where she brings us another valuable teaching. She will say, love often is something, this is the book Action and Reaction. Love is a divine force that often we degrade. Instead of understanding the divine force, the divine spark that we feel within, we often we don't do what love is expected to do. We don't put into action the way we feel it to be. We take love, something that is supposed to be pure, and we degrade it. We bring it to our own inferior level, as opposed to seeing the possibilities that are found and what we can do when love is applied. We take it pure and simple from the life with which the Lord has created us, and with it we invent hate and imbalance, cruelty and remorse. I can't read from there. We take it pure and simple from the life with which the Lord has created us, and with it we invent hate and imbalance, cruelty and remorse, and this strengthens us indefinitely in the darkness. As far as the law is concerned, it is nearly always out of love that we get entangled in mazes of bitterness, misunderstanding, and misuse. So here's the problem that she says that we create in relationships when we take the aspect of love and we completely distort it. Distorting the vision of what love truly is and the conflicts in relationship that it creates. When we take love and we don't truly understand what they're stating there is that we get entangled in mazes of bitterness. So if the lack of communication comes in and I'm hurt because you did this or that, in the name of love, because we love and we don't know how to apply that, we become bitter as opposed to using that as a communication tool, as opposed to applying forgiveness and tolerance. And then love is misinterpreted and misused. So then we have people in the world who will say, I am tired of love. I've given up on love. I will never love again. I will never open up my heart and be in a position where I will let somebody take me for granted or advantage of my kind heart. And here's what she's talking about, misunderstanding what love truly is supposed to be about. It's not that anybody's going to put themselves on the floor and you step on welcoming carpets. What she's talking about is being open to love regardless of what happens. Which is why Mother Teresa said, if you love and others don't love, love anyway. It's the invitation for us to be able to put that driving force of the universe into action. She states further that love is a force that is irresistible. And then we bring an example of Mary of Magdalene, 2,000 years ago, saying that she thirsted for love. She longed to be loved. And we're talking about a figure that we have that is still today judged, right, for her actions. But if we truly look at her story in the book that is soon coming out, Premises of the Kingdom, there is an entire history behind her that led her to the position of where she got to. Not just a prostitute, a woman who longed to be loved in ways that she had never been loved until she met Jesus. And then there were people who will distort that idea of love for whatever reason. The love that she longed for was one that when she found it in the eyes of Jesus, it showed her whom she was in essence, whom she had forgotten. And that's what Jesus provided for her. And then he finished by saying, Mary, love covers a multitude of sins. Whenever we take the aspect of putting love into practice, we are able to diminish the trials of our lives. That's what it means in Spiritist language. It doesn't mean that we're not going to go through the trials and expiations. It means that it's going to be lessened, softened, diminished. We're still going to go through the learning process, but it's going to be a lot softer, a lot kinder, a lot lighter. And so this is the kind of irresistible force that she was talking about. The truth of the matter is that when we consider love in relationships, we're going to find, it's stuck, there we go, that in reality, we are all one another's debtors. We owe each other a lot. 1,000 ties bind our hearts to each other, for now there is no perfect paradise for anyone who returns from earth, just as there is no complete purgatory for anyone who returns to the human maelstrom or to the human experiences on earth. Love is a divine force that nourishes us in every area of life, and our best asset is our mutual help for one another. So when we consider and we start asking why is it that there is so much conflict in relationships, that's the answer right there. So then when we go home, we can't pinpoint fingers anymore who's at fault in the relationship. Bringing the aspect of the law of cause and effect, of the law of reincarnation, of immortality, we find that when we reincarnate, we owe each other something. And that something is the love in action. The love agape that they talk about poetically as putting into motion in charitable actions, acts of kindness and tolerance and forgiveness. And so they will say that there is so many things that tie our hearts to the other that it will be through the process of reincarnation and being in contact with each other that we will be able to lessen those ties, to loosen those ties, to be able to develop love, which brings about hope in the future. Because truly, this is what the Spirit is teaching brings us for our knowledge. So then somebody here asked a long time ago, and we often ask the very same thing, wouldn't it be easier to just reincarnate remembering whom we might have hurt so that we can get quicker to work? Right? So I know that I heard Veronica a lot in the previous slide. I recognize her. I want to do everything possible to make amends with her. And it's a very valid question. So in the book Between Heaven and Earth, there's a conversation between this spirit called Antonina and a minister, and she says, if we could only recognize our former loved ones, and if we could see the faces of former friends again and recognize them, and then he cuts her off and he says, contacting the best ones again would entail contacting the worst ones too. Right? Mm-hmm. So then Val recognizes me and she's like, man, that woman killed me in my previous life. Inarguably, we haven't yet acquired balance and pure love, which is devoted to the higher designs without passion. For now, our ability to love suffers deplorable inclinations. It's not her fault that she won't be able to get all those feelings, all those passions, and not be able to hate me for remembering the kind of evil things that I did to her in a previous existence. It's because she hasn't yet acquired that spiritual elevation, the higher designs, to be able to look at me as somebody who was frail and weak and made mistakes in the past. And I'm here again to try to make amends with her, to try to help her, to try to lose those ties that bind our hearts because of something deplorable that happened in the previous existence. Without the temporary forgetfulness of our former lives, we couldn't receive yesterday's enemies into our heart to regenerate both ourselves and him. The law is wise. So then they're talking about how oftentimes we receive in our own home the enemy. And how sometimes we are the enemies being received at home as well, right?
Yes.
We're always like turning it around. Sometimes we are the ones who made the mistakes. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that we are here in this lifetime right now, and we all understand the aspect of reincarnation. We understand the aspect of attuned hearts. We understand the aspect of the lack of sympathy. We understand the fact that we can pinpoint people, that we have a truly deep, hardly felt love relationship, and those that we just can't seem to get near, like those magnets, if you try to put them, it kind of goes like you can't. You know who those people are. And that's exactly where it needs to be worked, on the aspect of relationships, of love and forgiveness. We don't need to remember what happened. We don't have to. We know that something is there to be entangled, like a big knot that needs to be little by little removed, undone, with easiness, with kindness, with love. And I really love what Sherry and Susanna brought last week, because sometimes there will be situations where people have to step away from each other. Quiet down a little bit. Realize what you can say without further damaging a relationship. Applying love. And misunderstandings will happen. I gotta use our example. So, this morning, because Sherry and Susanna use an example, I did something that I do every single morning as I get ready. For 7 years. I put the towel in the sink. That's what I do. I take the towel, I put it in the sink. So he will come in and he'll say, please don't put the towel in the sink. This is where we wash our faces. It's disgusting. He takes it away. So then I snap back with something that he does. I said, I'll stop doing this when you stop doing blah, blah, blah. Because he doesn't want me to say it. So, but I didn't snap. I kind of said it in a joking way, and from the mirror, I saw his face, right? You know the kind of face that goes like this? Like he got shocked? Obviously, he didn't know where I was coming from. And then I realized, I said, wow, maybe I offended him. So then he came and I said something nicer, you know, and then we addressed it in the car. He said, you know, I noticed your tone. And I said, I think you're mistaken. I didn't mean it to sound that way, right? But let's imagine that the two of us were irritated on that morning. At that time, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys like this. I'd probably be, you know, all closed and upset and stuff, and he wouldn't be smiling either. You know, if we had exploded on each other for something so small. So take some time, step away, recognize, be vigilant of how you're saying, what you're saying, how the other reacts to you, and not take offense. I wasn't offended. He thought I was offended. He wasn't offended. I thought he was offended. See how it works? So it's really interesting in the aspect of how we relate to each other and how we're able to study each other and pay attention to the other and step away when it's necessary so that we don't abuse and damage the relationship further. So all of a sudden, if it was something that was blown out of proportion, to say, you know what, let's talk about this later on, and go feed the cat, go play with the plants, go watch TV, go play a video game, go do whatever it is that calms us down until we are able to sit down and talk more and more about the things that are giving us such a hard time. Just to finish off, I wanted to try to incorporate a story that in reality brings us about love between spouses. It talks about love for humanity, love for those most in need, resignation to what cannot be changed, and resilience to continue to love, and in the end, finding reward in love. So this is based on a true story. It's a testimony that was given by David Landau and Shmuel Globa. It was a story translated from Yiddish, and it's found in the book that I love, The Small Miracles of the Holocaust. It talks a story about a small city in Poland in the 30s that had a Jewish dentist who lived there by the name of Dr. David Landau. He established a thriving practice in this small city, and he lived actually in a Christian neighborhood. Although his practice was Jewish, that's where they lived. He was a truly warm and kind man, and he formed friendships really quickly. So the relationships he had with others was always very loud and big. People recognized him for being a kind dentist. He often did a lot of work for free, especially at those trying times where people didn't have the ability to pay. He would put into practice his own practice for free. His wife, Shifra, that was her name, was a kindergarten teacher. And although she was Jewish, she also worked at a kindergarten that she established in this very same neighborhood, and she shared her husband's charisma. Now, they had been in love from the moment they had met. The kind of things that we read about love at first sight, which in reality is just two spirits recognizing each other and starting a life together. And so in the heart of the town, just like her husband's practice, her kindergarten flourished as well. Kids that were Christian, Jewish, every kind of kid. And she loved children so much. They didn't get to have any children of their own. The years passed by with a lot of peace until it came the 1939 year where Germany invaded Poland. And by doing so, they invaded the communities that were there. Now, the German soldiers, they loved the Polish liquors and delicacies that were available to them. And the problem was that from eating so much of their candy and drinking so much of their liquor, their teeth started to suffer. And so they sought out Dr. Landau, Dr. David Landau. And because of this, they established a friendship. Imagine this, a Jewish dentist, oh, John, I just remembered you're a dentist, a Jewish dentist sitting there befriending the enemy. The truth of the matter is that Dr. Landau didn't see the soldiers as German Nazi soldiers. He saw them as people in need of his care, and that's what he did. Because of their relationship and because they went there often and they befriended him, he was able to make connections to help the other Jews in the community. So whenever something was going to happen to a friend of his that was Jewish, he would talk to the soldiers, and the soldiers were able to make things go by unnoticed. Nothing happened. So their friends wouldn't hurt as well because of the friendship with the Nazis. One day, David couldn't be of any influence any longer. 3 Jews had been arrested for some minor infraction and they were condemned to be hanged. Now they were all forced to go to the public park because that's what they like to do. They like to hang the Jewish people in front of all the other Jews so that they'd be afraid of the consequences. And there was no bargaining or pleading or anything that David could do with the soldiers to free the 3 Jewish who had been arrested. They were all there, including Shifra and David, watching the scene. They were forced to be there. When the commander, the head soldier, looking at the crowd, looked at David and he said, you are going to put the rope around their neck. He froze. Because he was kind and the faith allowed him to be courageous, he said, I don't have the ability to do what you're asking of me. So the commander requested that 2 soldiers take him to the forest. 2 soldiers kill him in front of everybody. So the 2 soldiers who were his friends said, let us take him to the forest and kill him there. The commander caved in and the 2 soldiers escorted him to the forest. When they got there, he said, listen, we are going to shoot in the air twice and you're going to run. You're going to run as fast as you can and we're not going to kill you. They developed a true bond of friendship at that moment. And so he said, there are some peasants who live in the forest and they'll be able to help you for food, for anything that you might need. So he shot 2 shots in the air and he ran and ran and ran and ran. And when they got back, they said, it's done. We've killed him and we've buried him. Shifra, the wife, froze. She didn't have any reaction. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She didn't put her head down. She just stood there without any kind of emotion on her face. The time went by and Dovi started feeling the hunger. He was cold. He was afraid. He wasn't sure what he was going to find. And then maybe 2 weeks went by and he found a little cabin in the forest. He figured, I'm already dying of starvation. If they are Nazis, they'll just kill me anyway. They'll get me out of my own misery. He knocked on the door and a kind man opened the door. And he said, oh, you poor thing, you must be starving. Come in, hurry, come in. So they fed him. And before long, there was a news that a dentist had arrived in those peasants' area. And they were all hiding also from the Nazi. They were suffering badly from eating hard things in the forest, and their gums were swollen, their teeth was in bad situation. And so they decided that Dr. Landau was going to start a practice right there. So they went into the city and they were able to steal some medical supplies for the work to begin. And so he began doing the work with the partisans as well. Some of the people that were there knew him from town from before. So the development of the relationship between them got even stronger and strengthened over time. So throughout the 5 years, he thought about Shifra and what had happened to her. And he remembered that when he was taken to the forest and the 2 soldiers spared him his life, he forgot to ask about his own wife. And so he figured she's probably dead by now with the invasion of the Jewish in our town. And so he spent his whole life thinking about her and feeling sad for the situation that had happened. When they were released and he was able to go back into the town, he thought that he was going to be received by those who knew him with applaud and love for realizing that he was alive and hoping to find Shifra. And when he got there, he realized that Shifra was not there. And all those who were left walked around like zombies from the pain that they felt from losing their loved ones. So nobody realized who there was. There was nothing left for him to be. So he decided to migrate to Israel. and become part of what was called the Haganah, which was the Israeli Defense Force. He was the first Holocaust volunteer to be able to enlist and partake in this new phase of his life. And so he utilized and learned a lot about combat and intelligence skills to be able to fight. At that time, he watched many other survivors marry other women and develop long-lasting relationships, but he couldn't forget about Shifra. And so he decided that that's not what he was going to do. He would dedicate his life for the combat, the forces that he had joined in. He tried to track any information about Shifra in Europe, and he couldn't track her down either. And one day, his captain noticed that he would walk back and forth every afternoon with his head down. Often he would break down and cry, put his head in his hand and just sit there until the long hours of the night. And he had an idea. He felt the pain. So he brought in David and 2 other men, and he said that he was asked to dispatch the most competent, intelligent men to Poland to retrieve 3 Jewish children that were in an orphanage, in a Christian orphanage. And he decided that David was going to be one of those that were going to join in the adventure. He thought that would give him something to do and take him out of his sadness. So he welcomed that opportunity with grace, and he decided that he would go with his friends. So they were given British passports and instructed to pose as English journalists who were there to do some work and review and report back on his findings in Poland. And so somebody at the orphanage was going to be appointed to be able to help them take the children from the orphanage in the middle of the night and bring them back to their Jewish roots. A few weeks later, David decided that he would embark in this, and they did. So now the story brings us back to Shifra. Shifra, on that terrible day, returned home, and she feared that indeed her husband had been executed. When she got inside her house, she noticed on top of her table an envelope that said, "To Shifra, open alone." No signature, nothing. She opened, and in it, she found a false Polish passport with enough money for her to be able to travel anywhere she wanted, and a genealogical history of her pure Polish ancestry, saying that she wasn't Jewish. It was kind of a way for her to know that the soldiers had taken care of her, because that's in reality what had happened. So she didn't understand what was happening. She found herself thinking, maybe this is what I should do. So she sought out the rabbi and said, what am I going to do with the kids at my kindergarten? So the rabbi instructed her that based on their belief, it was commendable that she take care of herself first and then worry about the others. And so she decided to follow the counsel and travel to this little city called Greco. Greco was the city that the 3 soldiers, posing as British, were going to go rescue the children. When she got there, she applied to work at a Christian orphanage, to work with children. She had never had the opportunity to have any kids of her own, so she decided that the love that she felt and longed so much for her husband, unable to apply it in a long-lasting relationship again, she would devote herself for those who were most in need, the Christian children at the orphanage. And they were there. There, she met 3 children, 2 blonde, blue eyes, and 1 dark hair, dark eyes, and they resembled to be Jewish, of Jewish heritage, and she was intrigued by the kids. When the orphanage closed at night, she decided to go into the secretary's office and find the kids' files. And indeed, she found out that they were orphaned and they were Jewish kids. So she decided that they needed to go back to their families and find out what had happened. And that's when, anonymously, she reached out to the command forces of Israel asking for assistance to help the 3 children who were in need of being returned to their families. Because of the fact that she thought David had been dead, allowing herself to fall into a deep depression, when she found out about the 3 children, that gave her new hope. She figured, I couldn't help my husband, I couldn't help those that I left behind, I'm going to help these kids and make sure that they are reunited with their family. She watched over the children for several years, until Poland was liberated in 1945. And a few weeks later, she was the one who reached out to the Jewish Aid Society in Krakow to ask for assistance with the smuggling of the kids. One night, a telegram advised her that there was going to be some British journalists who were going to be arriving to assist her, and she was filled with a lot of love and joy in her heart. The journalist arrived and asked for her while the other journalist waited outside. He came in, she showed him around, showed him the 3 children, and when they went back outside, she sat on the chair with her head down, and the British journalist went to join the other one who was keeping watch outside. When he showed him the woman who was going to be able to assist them, he froze. It was Shifra, sitting right before him in the long hallway, crying, waiting with a face in her hands. He said, "It's my wife. She's in that study hall." Now they figured, if you appear before her, she's going to break down, and they're going to find out who we truly are. So we can't have that happen. And after the hours, they decided to have a game plan. The British that Shifra had met said, "Listen, I'm going to come at 2 a.m. and I'm going to cause a commotion. I'm going to be carrying a bottle of liquor and pretend that I'm drunk. And I'm going to ask you for assistance, since you're a Christian, to help my friend who's outside, fallen over drunk. But I gotta tell you something before this happens. Outside, you're going to find David Lando." She froze. She said, "It can be." He said, "It can be. He's outside. You can't react. You can't cry. You can't do anything." So she stopped, tears rolling down her cheek. She wipes her cheeks and she says, "I'm ready," thinking about the children. 2 o'clock rolled around. She opened the door to the orphanage. And the soldier who was keeping watch said, "What are you doing up so late, Shifra?" She said, "I can't sleep." And so the British soldier started walking towards her, kind of tumbling. And she says, "Come, soldier, help me, quickly." So he came and he said, "What happened?" She said, "I met this. These are the British journalists who needs our assistance." So the other British soldier said, "Hey, my friend's passed out outside. Can you help me bring him in?" So the soldier and the British person went outside and dragged David Lando into the orphanage. Imagine Shifra standing there, seeing her husband pretending to be passed out. The soldier greeted the British and brought in the passed out drunk British journalist inside, and he offered him a drink for helping him to be assisted, which the soldier drank, because that's what they like to do. While inside, they put something for the soldier to fall asleep. And so he drank, he fell asleep. The 3 of them, gathering strength, went into the children's room, took away the 3 children, the 3 Jewish children, and decided to run away. When they were alone in the car, she looked at David Lando, and David Lando looked at her, and she said, "Through my history and my life, in serving those most in need and love for you, I never thought I'd receive the reward of being with the love of my life yet again." So they gave in to the embraces and love and tears, obviously, that allowed them to be reunited yet again. The reason why we brought the story is because we find the many forms of love when applied, especially when there's so much pain and anguish, which Shifra had the courage to do in trying to maintain alive. And David, although he felt that she was dead, there was always a hope, a glimpse of something, that he would be reunited with his wife. One of the reasons he never decided to take on another wife and live for her. So he longed to meet her and find her and dedicate his time for the defense arms in Israel, to be of service for those in need. And one of the things that we find is that in a story like this, or if we break it into our own life stories and the kind of love relationships that we have, and I'm certain all of you are probably thinking about something in your mind right now that only the spirits can see, we find that there is a strong enough force in the universe that allows for moments of reconciliation, of peacefulness, of being able to forgive and look at the other with a kind of kindness that often we don't allow ourselves to because our hearts are hardened. It's frozen. It's unable to allow for the force to free flow so that we can reach those that are around us. And the other aspect is that there, in the aspect of using Mother Teresa an example, Albert Schweitzer, so many people, David Landau and Shifra, we find that there is enough people in the world that are in need of love, that are in need of assistance, that are in need for us to simply look and search and reach out for them and applying this divine force that in reality is irresistible. And the other aspect we find in David Landau's relationship and learning how to deal with others with kindness and looking at them as people, he was able to befriend the enemy, the Nazis, the very same who at the end saved his life, the very same who at the end saved his wife's life by giving her the passport and the money for her to be able to run away. So what we wanted to bring here today is a reflection for us just to simply think about the kind of relationships that are troubled at this time and what we can do by applying the love for one's neighbors and love for oneself that Jesus appointed over 2,000 years ago. Love for our enemies, in reality, bringing into Spirit's view, is this opportunity in this reincarnation to try to apply it and make amends from previous mistakes, from past mistakes, even in this lifetime, that we are giving opportunities over and over and over because of that divine breath of love from God, our Creator. And that's what we wanted to bring here today. So with that, we'll open for comments and questions. And thanking you for your patience and loving patience to hear me out.